I did indeed. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome from me, and hopefully you can hear me loud and clear as well. I can't hear Anna on my headset, but hopefully you can hear me. I just hear her in the room. I'm going to sort it out with GoToWebinar because it's driving me nuts. I thought, sorry, just our technical problems as usual. I thought I'd start with the currency array. I've been on the pound yen for about an hour or so. It's ticked up over 100 pips already. Since we were up early doors, and there's been a lot of pound buying. There's quite a few things going on at the moment, so I just want to highlight one or two for them. The array, if you don't use the array or you haven't got the array, it's just a terrific indicator to give you so many different bits of information. What it tells you, for example, it tells you about the sentiment, the global sentiment. In other words, is everyone buying the pound, or is everyone selling the pound, or a particular currency you're looking at? And as you can see here, it's pretty much universal. We've got almost a full house. This is on the 3 minute. This is on the 5 minute. Over on 15, I've got the full array up. I haven't isolated out the pound. But certainly at the moment, as you can see, we've got cable at the top here, pound CAD. There's been a lot of CAD selling over the last few hours. That's partly related to oil. I've got the oil chart, so I'll pull that up as well and have a quick look at that. I'm sure you're aware of what's been going on in oil in the last few weeks. And it was interesting to see the inventories come through yesterday have little impact. And this is also true of what's going on in terms of the news releases that are coming out now. We've had UK retail sales. No great surprise that it was weaker than expected, and that trend obviously is going to continue with what's going on. So whether that reflects anything meaningful right now is hard to say, but the fact that it is worse than expected and the pound is actually going up on the strength of that. Now, this is going to be a facet of dealing with the fundamental news over the next few months that isn't going to go away. And it's the facet that the news is bad, but then perhaps it's less bad than was expected. So this is going to happen a great deal across all the markets, where the reaction to a piece of news, be it bad, is actually positive in terms of the currency response or the market response, because it's less bad than expected. It's not good news, but it's less bad than the market thought or feared. So just bear that in mind over the next few months. With global economies now in complete meltdown, that is going to be a facet that's going to be common throughout. And you're just going to have to be aware of the fact it's something we cover in detail in the program, that it's not simply that markets rise on good news and fall on bad. It's all a question of relativity. And in addition to that, when you go to Forex Factory, it's all a question of the trend as well. You'll see the little icon on the histogram when you go to Forex Factory on the right-hand side. Again, it's covered in the program. That will give you a context of trend of data as opposed to trend of chart. So you can see up here, cable, as I say, we've got pound yen. Pound yen's not the strongest. It's down here at spot 4 at the moment, but certainly in terms of cable, that's rising strongly. And you can also see it over here on the 5 minute, and indeed over onto the 15 minute as well. So we've got some pretty strong moves in a nice strong trend. So in addition to that, it also tells you, the currency array tells you when these currency pairs are perhaps moving into overbought or oversold territory. When they come up with these brackets around in the darker color, it means they're approaching that particular inflection point. And when they change the brighter colors, it means they've actually arrived at that potential inflection point, and then it's off to the chart to see what the volume price analysis is telling you, support and resistance, supply and demand, everything else. Let's head off over to the charts. Where are we? There we go. Let's go back on to, there we are, currency charts in multiple time frames. This is pound yen. Bear in mind, obviously, we've got the London Open now at 8 o'clock. Just going to pull over the trading view because this is what's happening on the VIX at the moment. Certainly higher than it was last night. It's trading up at 66.7. It's not roaring up, but nevertheless it's on an uptrend, but it's in congestion, so it's creeping up. The markets are very fragile. This gives you a perspective on the balance of puts and options in the market, which then gives you a view on whether the market is in panic or whether it's it's happy. And that's basically what the volatility index does. It's a measure of fear. If it's rising strongly, then equities are falling, and vice versa. And using it intraday in this way gives you a straight heads up on what is going on in terms of equity markets. UK markets just open now, 4 minutes up. A lot of volatility as you would expect. Also got the BOE later on. Just move that out the way again. There we go. Keep an eye on that. Just flick that back to the VIX. I can keep an eye on the VIX. There we go. VIX is just ticking off now, coming off a little bit lower. So maybe helping to push the yen pairs a little bit higher. No great surprise on the session crossover at 8 o'clock to see the usual volatility come in. If you're not familiar with session crossovers, I would urge you to make yourself familiar with them, because they are the points at which you're going to get trapped big time if you're not aware of what's going on and why it's happening. It's a wonderful opportunity for the market makers. Just pull that out a bit. Terrific opportunity for the market makers to reverse. Volatility comes in, quick moves to the upside or the downside, traders jump in, and then they're trapped in a weak position. And it's just based on the fear of missing out, because if a market's fast moving, your emotional reaction, your instant response is to jump in. That's how we're programmed. That's in our DNA. We can't help it. Just be aware of what is going on, because when your markets are moving fast, that's the reason why, and you can be assured that the market makers are participating. What we're seeing right now is we've had the volatility, we've had some sideways price action. Looks as though it's clearing to the upside. We have a decent amount of buying coming under this candle on 5 with this high volume here. So the market's moved to the downside, a lot of volume coming in. And just remember, when you're comparing in a comparative sense of volume, this is where the beauty of NinjaTrader is that you do actually get the print in real time to your local geographic region. This is 7 o'clock. This is when Europe gets underway. So we know this volume in here. We can compare over here. This is Far East Asia going right the way out here. So this is comparative. We can't compare this with this, but certainly over the last hour, we can compare volume here. And now as we get into London, we can see the surge in London, which is what you expect to see. I think last week it was anomalous. We actually saw higher volume in Europe from memory and lower volume in London, which was curious, sets the alarm bells ringing. So what you're always looking for in the session crossover, certainly into London at any rate, out of Europe, you want to see higher volume. If you see lower volume, it's anomalous. There's a reason it's lower. So you have to ask yourself why, and you've got to go and investigate why. So this is pushing on nicely higher. This is on 15-second. I'm not suggesting you go to this. I like to have it because it gives me a very quick heads up on what's coming up into the slightly slower time frames. You can have this on 30-second or a minute, probably more practical, but this is what I like to use across pretty much all the markets I trade. We had a volatility trigger down here on 15. Looks as though it's going to clear that as well. So, you know, it's a nice move. The trend monitor here is helping. We spent a lot of time on the trend monitor last night in terms of the US futures. It just gives you the confidence to hold a position in the market, because when you get these little congestion phases, or when you get a little market pull back against you, you have to have that confidence. The hardest thing to do in trading is to hold a position in the market, bar none. There isn't anything more difficult to do. Once you're in a position, you've got some nice profit in the bank, and then you start to see it drain away as the market reverses against you. The trend monitor will help you, but use it in multiple time frames, because obviously what's going to happen here, if this market does start to pull back a little bit, you're going to see it here first, then it will ripple through to here, through to the next one, and so on and so forth. At the moment, we're still bullish. These are all blue. We've got a blue transition down here on 15. We've gone straight from bearish into bullish here. There's no transitional colors, so it's a pretty strong move. Doesn't always follow, as here, for example, we had the, I'll just pop that up full size, sorry, keep it smaller. Where were we? Here we are. Here we had a transitional through. It didn't follow through, but we had the transitional colors, the darker red and the darker blue, into the blue. Then we went straight back into bearish again. Now we're coming out the other side into bullish. Let me just go to the multiple CSIs, see what's going on. Where are we? There we go. Okay. This is the pound buying we're seeing, the yellow line. You can see it here. This is on 3 minute, this is on 5 minute, this is on 10 minute, this is on 15 minute. So it's very, very strong. Which is the best pair to buy that against? Well, you know, spoiled for choice at the moment. You've got the yen here, which is diving sharply, which is why we're seeing that strong move in the pair. We've got it diving sharply here. We've got a cross here, and it's diving away here as well. So that looks pretty good. You spot, as I say, spot for choice. You could be looking at cable as well. If you remember, I think cable was at the top on the array, so that was even stronger than the yen. But always what you're looking for. And what's interesting is, as I said, there was heavy selling in the Canadian. That Canadian has now reversed into buying. It's why I always, personally, I'm always looking at reversals. I'm always looking at the extremes. I'm looking for those opportunities where I can get in early. You can see the strength of the buying that's come into the Canadian dollar here. It's reversed very sharply off the oversold here and again here. So in terms of the CAD yen, you know, you've got a cross here. So really across the yen complex, you're almost spoiled for choice. You've got the New Zealand kicking up, you've got the Aussie rising, you've got, so all the commodity dollars are buying very strongly. Part of the reason for that, I'm just looking over, pull this over again for you, if I can find my cursor over here on the other screen. There we go. You can see the VIX is starting to sell off a little bit. Trend monitors on here. This is 1 minute, by the way. This is 2 minute. This is 3 minute. And this is 5 minute. Got the trend monitor on here. You can see the transition here. We've gone into bearish on 2, bearish, flip-flopping around on 3. No real great change on 5 because it's not that dramatic. But it's just giving you a heads up as to another facet of sentiment. And of course, I'll just have a quick look to see what the FTSE is doing. The FTSE's come off. It's volatile. It's down a little bit, but it's not falling out of bed at the moment. I'll head over onto. Let's just see what the US indices are doing. Just flick down to this one. There we go. These are the US futures. We've got the YM here on 5 minute, NQ, NASDAQ, and over on the right hand side, the ES. Top line is 5 minute, bottom is daily. Please don't worry about the volume profiles here because, as I explained last night, the breakers have been coming in and out on these markets consistently because of the massive moves in the market, moving past the 7% triggers and 10% and 5% and all the rest of it. So the volume on these dailies is completely up the swanny for that particular reason. So until the markets settle down, you know, trying to read the daily charts, we have to ignore some of this stuff in here because it's meaningless basically at the moment. It will come back and settle down. Started seeing a little bit of rally there, a little bit of weakness coming in here. We've got a bit of weakness coming in here. So the market's trying to push higher. This is on the daily in terms of the price action. We had these push-ups yesterday and then a collapse back and down again, trading in a relatively narrow range at the moment, trying to be bearish, but you know, not maintaining that momentum. Let's go back onto the charts again. So on pound yen, let's just see what's going on in terms of cable. Okay, cable on 5. We've got a volatility candle, so we want to wait for that to clear. Decent volume under here. Just waiting for it to move away from this region. We've got volatility on 15, another volatility trigger here on the open, on the crossover rather. Let's have a look at the 30 minute. Yeah, I can move back to you. Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to move back to Anna for a moment. We've also got the BOE later on today. No great surprise that I think it's forecast as a 0.009 score, which is hardly a great surprise. And data like that and many other facets of fundamental data will become less important over the next few months for that particular reason, for what we're going through right now. Just going to transfer back to Anna.